3-1. And Springer grounds it left side. McMahon charges, steps in the bag, throws across, and it's off the glove of Garcia looking for the pick. He'll throw it to third. Nobody covering, and the ball gets away. Guerrero pops to his feet, and he will score.
Blue Jays Nation, hold on to something, because that collision, Vladdy getting absolutely creamed at third base, helmet flying off his head, and still finding a way to get up and sprint home to score. That right there is the most Blue Jays moment of this entire wild, chaotic season. 1 second, you're terrified your franchise player just got seriously hurt. The next second, he's crossing the plate to tie the game. That's 2026 in a nutshell, folks. Pure chaos, pure heart, and somehow, some way, it keeps working out. I'm AJ Maestro from Blue Jays Hub, and first things first, thank you, Blue Jays Nation. We smashed through 3,000 subscribers, and honestly, watching this community grow while this team fights for its playoff life has been one of the most fun rides I've had doing this channel. Now we're gunning for 4,000. And if you're new here, if you just stumbled onto this video because you searched Vladdy concussion or Ricky Tiedemann debut, do yourself a favor and hit that subscribe button right now, because I am not doing the softened corporate version of Blue Jays coverage. No filter, just the truth, the drama, and my honest opinions on everything happening with this team. Let's get into it, because there is so much to unpack. So let's start with the news that's got everybody's stomach in nuts. Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is now on the 7-day concussion injured list. And look, in my personal opinion, even though this is scary, it actually makes complete sense once you look at what happened. Vladdy left Friday's game after a genuinely nasty collision at third base. Yankees rookie shortstop George Lombard Jr. was going for a ball, and his knee and thigh caught Guerrero right in the head as he was sliding in. His helmet got knocked clean off. And here's the part that got me. He got up and he sprinted home to score the tying run in what became a 3-1 Blue Jays win. But according to multiple reports, he looked dazed after crossing the plate. Manager John Schneider initially called it precautionary, said Guerrero had, quote, a little bit of a headache, but by Saturday, after Guerrero went through concussion testing, the results pointed to something more serious. And the team made the move to the 7-day IL. And I want you to hear exactly what Schneider said, because it tells you everything about how careful they're being with this. Schneider explained that the symptoms were there, and listening to the doctors and everything that goes into the protocol, it checked enough boxes for an IL stint. He said Guerrero was going through testing and felt a little bit worse than he did the day before, which in my personal opinion is honestly to be expected. You go home, you sleep. Sometimes symptoms actually intensify the next morning before they get better. Schneider added that hopefully it's a minimal stay, that Guerrero is frustrated he's not out there, but that they have to be careful with this. And Blue Jays Nation, I appreciate that. I really do. Because this front office and this coaching staff have earned a reputation, in my personal opinion, for actually protecting their players instead of rushing them back for a quick win. Concussion protocols in this league are strict for a reason, and nobody wants a Vladdy who comes back too early and deals with lingering symptoms into September and October, when this team might actually be playing meaningful baseball. Now, here's the silver lining, and I don't say that lightly. With a head injury, the timing actually isn't the worst it could be. The Blue Jays have an off day built into this 7-day window, which means Guerrero is realistically only missing about 5 or 6 games total, not a full week of action. That is, relatively speaking, a break the Jays can absorb, especially with how the rest of this roster has been performing lately. And look, I'll say something a little controversial here. In my personal opinion, given how brutally Guerrero has been slumping since the end of April, a mental reset, even one forced by unfortunate circumstances, might not be the worst thing for him long term. I'm not saying a concussion is ever a positive. It's not. I've dealt with head injuries myself, and they are no joke. But sometimes stepping away from the day-to-day grind of a slump, even involuntarily, can reset a player's headspace. We'll see if that theory holds up when he's activated. So who fills the gap? This is where it gets genuinely exciting, Blue Jays Nation. In a corresponding move, the Blue Jays selected outfielder Daz Cameron to the active roster from AAA Buffalo. Problem for opposing pitching. We're talking a batting average north of .360 and OPS over 1.000. In a small sample, sure, but you cannot ignore numbers like that. He runs well, he can play all 3 outfield spots, and critically, he gives Schneider another right-handed bat to throw out there against the wave of left-handed pitching the Jays are about to face. And in my personal opinion, that matchup piece matters more than people realize. This team is staring down a stretch with real lefty exposure, and having another right-handed bat who can actually hit is not a small thing. But folks, here's the part of this story that I don't think got nearly enough attention when it dropped, and it's honestly the more interesting roster management story of the weekend. To make room for Cameron on the 40-man roster, the Blue Jays designated right-hander Lazaro Estrada for assignment, and a lot of Blue Jays Nation was scratching their heads at this one. Why Estrada? Why not someone else in that bullpen who's been struggling more? Well, according to reporting from Riley Delaney over at Blue Jays Nation, there is a very specific roster mechanics reason behind this. And once you understand it, the move makes a ton of sense. Here's the rule: a player can be optioned to the minors 5 times in a single season before a team needs to pass him through waivers to option him a 6th time. This DFA of Estrada marked his 5th option related stint of the season. That means the next time the Blue Jays wanted to send him back down, he would have had to clear waivers first. And there was real risk that another team could simply claim him and Toronto would lose him for nothing. So rather than risk losing him outright down the road for zero return, the front office made the calculated move now, while they still have some control over the process. In my personal opinion, that is a smart, if slightly cold-blooded front office decision. It sucks on a human level. Estrada had genuinely earned some good moments this season, including his first career save. But roster math is roster math, and Ross Atkins' front office clearly decided the flexibility was worth more than sentiment. And look, I want to be real with you, Blue Jays Nation, because that's what this channel is about. No sugarcoating. This means Estrada's run with this organization, a guy who signed with Toronto as an international free agent all the way back in 2018 out of Cuba, might genuinely be over. He's got a short window now where another team could claim him off waivers, or he could get traded, or worst case for him, he clears and heads back to the minors on a new track entirely. 8 years in one organization, and it could all end with a corresponding move for an outfielder call-up. That's baseball, folks. Cold, calculated, and sometimes brutal. Comment down below what you think about how the Jays handled this one, because I know Blue Jays Nation has strong feelings either way. Now let's pivot, because we need to talk about the moment that had this entire fan base buzzing all weekend. Ricky Tiedemann made his major league debut, and Blue Jays Nation, if you don't know the backstory here, buckle up, because this is one of the more emotional arcs on this roster. Tiedemann was a third-round pick back in 2021, and for a stretch there, he was legitimately considered one of the best pitching prospects in all of baseball. Then the injuries hit. Elbow issues limited him in 2024, and he eventually needed Tommy John surgery that summer, wiping out the rest of that year and all of 2025. 2 full seasons gone. For a guy who was once dreaming about a big league rotation spot, that is a brutal, soul-crushing setback. But he kept grinding, made it back onto the 40-man roster this offseason to protect him from the Rule 5 draft, and Saturday against the New York Yankees, in front of a Rogers Center crowd, he finally got the call. And folks, he did not look like a guy who'd been away from live big league action for 2 years. He threw 1 2/3 innings, allowed just 1 run on 2 hits, struck out 2 batters, and his fastball was sitting in the mid-90s and touching as high as 97.2 miles an hour. His final strikeout of the outing came against Yankees slugger Ben Rice, and by all accounts, it was an absolute thing of beauty. 18 of his 27 pitches went for strikes. And my personal opinion, that is about as good a debut as you could script for a guy who's been through what he's been through. Tiedemann spoke afterward about what this meant, not just for himself, but for his family. Everybody who sacrificed anything for him growing up, getting him to every game. It's a genuinely emotional story, and I don't think it's an exaggeration to say this bullpen just got a real X-Factor arm at the perfect time, with the Yankees, the Rays, and other lefty-heavy lineups still on the schedule down the stretch. And can we talk about the actual win itself for a second? Because Saturday's 4-1 victory over the Yankees was not just a nice win. In my personal opinion, it might be one of the more statement-making wins of this entire season, given the circumstances. This was a bullpen game. Toronto used 7 different pitchers. Their franchise first baseman was in concussion protocol, and they still found a way to shut down a Yankees lineup and win their 13th game in their last 19. The hero of the day was Charles McAdoo, who has been an absolute revelation, filling in for Guerrero. McAdoo delivered a go-ahead RBI double in the 7th inning, added another RBI single, and Nathan Lucas chipped in as well during a 2-run 8th that put the game away. Spencer Miles picked up the win out of the bullpen, and closer Louis Varland slammed the door with a strikeout the side, 9th inning, his 28th save in 29 opportunities. That is elite shutdown relief work. And Schneider said something after the game that I think perfectly captures where this team is right now mentally. He said they're embracing what they're good at right now, and sometimes it doesn't look the sexiest, but they're okay with that. He talked about giving the players credit for not looking at a tough matchup on paper and folding, but instead finding a way to win anyway. And Blue Jays Nation, watching these games, you can feel that this roster is playing with an edge right now. The vibes, as I like to say, are genuinely high. Now let's get into the number that actually matters most heading into today, where this team actually sits in the wild card race. And I need to be straight with you here because there's been some conflicting information floating around, and I'm not going to feed you an optimistic version that isn't accurate. As of Saturday's win, the Blue Jays briefly moved into a share of the final American League wildcard spot, but the race did not stay still overnight. The Texas Rangers beat the Athletics in their late Saturday game, and that result flipped things back in Texas's favor. So heading into today's series finale against the Yankees, the accurate picture is this. The Blue Jays sit at 61 and 64, tied with the Baltimore Orioles and Detroit Tigers, a half game back of that final wild card position, which currently belongs to the Rangers at 61 and 63. It is tight. It is absurdly tight. There are still, believe it or not, roughly a dozen American League teams within a handful of games of that final spot with about 6 weeks of baseball left to play. In my personal opinion, that is both terrifying and thrilling in equal measure because every single game the Jays play from here on out is basically a playoff elimination game in disguise. No margin for error. This is not a team that gets to coast. And here's why today matters so much, Blue Jays Nation. The Jays have a real chance to complete a series sweep of the Yankees this afternoon. First pitch is set for 1:37 Eastern at Rogers Center. New York has dropped 3 straight games and has scored a grand total of 2 runs across that entire stretch. Their offense has gone stone cold at the worst possible time for them. Toronto is sending out Dylan Cease, who has been an absolute ace this season and is legitimately in the mix for the American League Cy Young conversation with an ERA sitting around 2.40 and well over 190 strikeouts on the year. He'll face off against Yankees lefty Ryan Weathers. If the Jays can find a way to complete this sweep, that is a massive statement in a race this crowded, especially with an off day tomorrow to let the pitching staff regroup before heading to Tampa Bay for a 3-game set with the division-leading Rays. In my personal opinion, sweeping a team like the Yankees, even a struggling version of them, in the middle of a playoff race is exactly the kind of signature win this roster needs to build real belief heading into the stretch run. So here's where I land on all of this, Blue Jays Nation. This team is banged up. Their best hitter is in concussion protocol. They've had to make cold, calculated roster decisions that cost a guy his spot in the organization, and yet somehow they are still standing right at the doorstep of a playoff spot with a rotation ace on the mound today and a red-hot bullpen behind him. That, to me, captures exactly what this season has been. Chaotic, emotional, occasionally heartbreaking, but never, ever boring. Whether it's Daz Cameron stepping into the lineup, Ricky Tiedemann finally getting his shot after 2 years of rehab hell, or Charles McAdoo continuing to be the most unexpected hero of this entire summer, this roster keeps finding a way. And in my personal opinion, that resilience is exactly why this fan base should not be looking away right now, even with the standings this tight and this uncertain. All right, Blue Jays Nation, that's what I've got for you today. I want to know what you think down in the comments. Are you buying into this playoff push, or are you bracing yourself for more heartbreak? Do you trust the front office's handling of the Estrada situation? And how excited are you about Ricky Tiedemann's future in that bullpen? Let me know all of it down below. I read every single comment. If this video helped you catch up on everything going on with this team, smash that like button. It genuinely helps this channel grow. And if you're new here, subscribe, because we are closing in on 4,000 subscribers. And I want every single one of you along for the ride as this playoff race plays out. No filter, no fluff, just Jays. We out.